All right, let's get started. Greetings and welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining this installment of our live webinar series. My name is Guru Banavar, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Viome Life Sciences, where I'm responsible for our discovery and our AI efforts. And today I'm joined by two speakers, two who are our foremost experts in Viome. Dr. Eric Patridge, who is a computational systems biology principal scientist. And let's go to the next slide, please. There you see Eric, computational systems biology principal scientist. And we also have Dr. Grant Antoine, Translational Science Clinical Expert. You may have seen Grant on one of our previous webinars as well. So today, Eric, Grant, and I will focus on oral health and its importance for full body wellness. As you know, we introduced a saliva sample test in the latest full body intelligence product. And let's talk about why. So the mouth is the gateway to the entire body. And in many ways, it's a mirror of everything that's going on inside our body. And, you know, this is not new news. It's something we've known for actually centuries that, you know, there is a lot of activity going on in the mouth. There are microbes that live, and there's a lot of biochemical activities that are super important for our health. But still, science has only recently started learning about the full extent of what the oral microbiome is and how it impacts your health. We are beginning to see that cultivating a thriving oral microbiome is a major step in maintaining our health and improving our health from not only from your mouth, but throughout the entire body. So you know that our body is a host to countless microscopic organisms known as the microbiome. And there are many sites of the microbiome, and your mouth is one of the largest microbiome sites in your body. The oral microbiome is the collection of bacteria, viruses, fungi within your mouth. And it turns out that after your gut, your mouth is the largest and the most diverse microbiome in your body. It probably contains, like I said, billions of microbes. We did a study here at Viome, and we looked at the oral microbiomes of about 1,000 people. And we detected around 2,500 active species of microorganisms. And we also detected more than 5,000 active microbial functions. And I use the word active because, as you all probably know, in Viome, we detect RNA, not DNA, that's gene expression. And therefore, we are looking for active microbes that are expressing their genes and doing something. These organisms live in your saliva and literally on every surface of your mouth. They gather in colonies in your teeth, in your gums, your tongue, your hard palate, and practically every crevice in your oral cavity. And as you can imagine also, your saliva is in touch with all of these surfaces. So when you send a sample of your saliva to Viome as part of the full body intelligence kit, we extract, we sequence, and we analyze all those, all the biological information that we get from your sample using cutting-edge metatranscriptomic technology and bioinformatics technologies. It turns out that what we detect in your saliva includes not only the microbiome, but also the human cells that are shed into your saliva from your gums, your cheek, your tongue, and other surfaces within your mouth. And in that same Viome study I mentioned earlier of about 1,000 people, we found that we could detect more than 6,000 human genes expressed within your saliva. That is actually super impressive, that you have all of these microorganisms being expressed and the human genes that are being expressed as well. And it turns out that looking at both the microbial and the human genes is very important in understanding the biology, because the two are in a kind of an intricate dance with each other that impacts our health. So when certain microbes are active, they trigger certain human genes to be expressed and human pathways like in the immune system. And that in turn either reduces or increases microbial activities. And this interaction between the human and the microbial cells is part of what we call system biology. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that along with Eric today. One more really important point. It has become very clear recently that oral health is connected to the health of all of the major systems in our body, which is kind of what you see in the graphic on the screen right now. Think about it. You know, the microbes in your mouth can get into your GI system when you swallow. And some of them can get past the acidic environment of your stomach and get into the intestines. So in a study we did in Viome, we in fact saw that. We found that people who take, you know, proton pump inhibitors have a greater probability of seeing oral microbes in their gut microbiome. Fusobacterium nucleatum is a classic example of that, which is found a lot in your oral microbiome, and that can show up in your gut microbiome as well. And it turns out it's higher for people who take these PPIs. And you know that the gut microbiome can influence many aspects of your health. So the oral microbiome is in fact responsible for a lot of the things that go on in the rest of the body as well. Another way that the microbes in your oral cavity can enter your bloodstream is if you have a cut in your gums or anywhere in your mouth, right? So for example, you know, P. gingivalis, which is a cause of inflammation in your gums and can potentially cause periodontal disease of some kind and produce virulence factors of all kinds, like lipopolysaccharides, or known as LPS, or gingipain, and so on. These can cross the barrier from your oral microbiome into your bloodstream through these cuts. And recent science has shown that oral health is associated with the health of all of the important systems in your body. Those microbes and the products of the microbes in your oral systems can impact the immune system, and they can impact cardiovascular processes, brain and neurological processes, your metabolic processes, and so on. And that's really what we mean by systems biology. It's when you keep one of these systems healthy, it impacts the rest of your body and all of the other subsystems in our system of systems, so to speak. So in summary, you will see a partial signal maybe in one of these subsystems, maybe in your gut microbiome or in your oral microbiome or in your blood transcriptome. But when you look at all of them, you get a much fuller picture. You get what's going on in the entire body, and you can take care of a lot of factors that can in fact improve all of these systems. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So Eric will begin by talking about how we measure and quantify your oral health using the molecular markers we detect in your saliva. And after that, Grant will talk about how we use that information to give you precise nutritional recommendations and how that can improve your wellness overall. So first, let's start with Eric. Over to you, Eric.
Great. Thank you, Guru. I'm excited to introduce you all to the oral health score. And this is visible in your Viome account and visible near the top of your scores page. Today, we're going to cover the functional scores for oral health. These include breath management and dental health and gum health. And these are the scores for the focus today. And to further orient everyone, it's important to note that all of these scores assess the oral microbiome. They measure functions and pathways that are active within the oral microbiome. Before we continue, I would like to also take a moment to get at what Guru was suggesting to present a high-level overview of the scoring process after we receive your kit. So as Guru already said, the first thing that we do is measure all of the individual transcripts contained in your sample by identifying and counting each and every one. The next thing that we do is compute your scores one at a time. And we use only your transcripts that are relevant to Viome's functional or pathway scores. Finally, applying computational weightings to each of those transcripts, each transcript will add or subtract from your score that you see in the app. So for all of the new scores, a high score indicates that the customer sample falls into a good range, while a low score indicates that your sample falls into a not optimal range. Here's one example when we put this all together. For your score that measures volatile sulfide compounds, transcripts from your sample that encourage volatile sulfide production will decrease your score that you see in the app, because volatile sulfides are likely to contribute to bad breath. Now we'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. What does good or average or not optimal mean? Well, beyond the initial assessment that you receive, we can further unpack the results in the context of what each of these three scores measure. So we're going to take a moment to briefly dive into each of these three oral health scores. But before we do, it may help to know that each of these functional scores spans two pathway scores. So for example, the gum health functional score considers 1, microbial pathways involved in mucin degradation, and 2, microbial pathways which promote inflammation. So let's take a moment at the breath management functional score. Breath management has two subcategories which encompass microbial pathway scores that are relevant to unpleasant odor because of molecules like polyamines and sulfides. These odors originate from food material that remains attached to your tongue, your teeth, and your oral lining, which microbes can use to produce volatile sulfur-containing compounds. Alternatively, microbes can also release these compounds from food in your esophagus or stomach. So after consuming foods such as eggs, shrimp, horseradish, or maybe cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, you may notice an increase of sulfur on your breath. And this is because of microbes metabolizing sulfur-containing compounds from those foods. Specifically, when assessing volatile sulfides, we consider compounds like hydrogen sulfide, methyl mercaptan, and other methyl sulfides, which compose some highly odorous and key elements of bad breath. Now, if you eat cheese, shellfish, soy, fermented foods, or citrus fruits, for example, then you may notice an increased smell of polyamines on your breath. And this is because the microbes will then release or produce polyamine-containing compounds from foods. Specifically, when assessing volatile polyamines, we consider compounds like putrescine, cadaverine, spermine, and spermidine. And these are also known to be highly odorous and key elements of bad breath. Now, the decision to include these aspects of breath management, the volatile sulfides and the polyamines, was because these compounds represent most of the known origins for bad breath, and at least 1 in 4 people may benefit from improved breath. Now, let's take a moment to move on to dental health functional score. Dental health focuses on only microbial pathways affecting your enamel and teeth. And there are 2 subcategories which encompass the microbial pathway scores. And these include 1, the microbes themselves, measuring the presence of taxa, which are known to live in or support a cavity-causing oral microbiome. And 2, microbial pathways which directly cause cavities. For those of you who regularly consume foods that are high in sugar, then your oral environment may support growth for certain kinds of microbes that cause cavities. Specifically for microbes themselves, we focus on clinically relevant taxa like Streptococcus mutans, which is widely considered to be the most carcinogenic microbe. On the opposite end, we included commensal microbes, which are known to support fewer dental cavities. Now, if you consume sucrose, table sugar, dairy, fermented foods, vinegars, fruits, berries, or starches, then microbes in your mouth may convert these foods into acidic compounds and cause increased cavities. Specifically for microbial activities, we focused on compounds like succinic acid and lactic acid, which affect the pH, since a more acidic environment promotes cavities. We also included activities related to karyogenic biofilm formation, since this would indicate bacterial growth related to dental cavities. So the decision to focus on these aspects of dental health, karyogenic microbes and cavity-linked pathways, was made because the formation of dental cavities is well-established endpoint for oral health, and these can be linked to both microbes and acidic environments which break down enamel and extract compounds from your teeth. Finally, let's return to gum health, which I briefly touched upon at the beginning. Gum health focuses on the barriers which protect your lower gums, your upper gums, and your oral lining. And there are two categories which encompass, first, microbial pathways related to the degradation of mucin. And this is a component of saliva. And second, microbial pathways which are pro-inflammatory. Now, those of you who eat more sugars, but less protein and fewer citrus fruits, you may find increased dry mouth or cavities because of decreased mucin production or the production of less mucin, less complex mucin. So mucin that is less complex. The primary reason we focus on mucin in the oral environment is because it serves as a barrier which protects the mouth. One aspect we assessed was the microbial degradation of mucins. For this, we focused on the metabolism of fucose and sialic acid. These are specific compounds which are released by microbes as the microbes consume mucin. So a higher activity indicates mucin is being consumed by the microbes. Now, for those of you who skip probiotic yogurts and foods high in polyphenols, you may experience an increase in biofilm formation with those microbes which form plaques and irritate your gums. Specifically for microbial activities that promote inflammation, we focused on LPS or lipopolysaccharides, biofilm, and protease activities, which included features from the red complex and the type 9 secretory system. These kinds of activities may disrupt the oral microbiota and overwhelm the host immune response and result in the development of oral diseases. So the decision to focus on these aspects of gum health, mucin degradation, and pro-inflammatory pathways was made because these are some of the earliest indicators of potentially destructive microbial activity in the mouth. So that covers the oral health scores up to this point, and I'm going to pass it back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. That's fascinating. It's a huge number of things going on in the world of biology in your mouth. And as you all can already hear in Eric's comments, there is a significant connection between what you consume and your oral health. So Grant will now tell us more about the best nutritional intake. Over to you, Grant.
Yeah. Hey, guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Before we get into the actual recommendations, I want to talk a little bit about how we develop our recommendations at Viome, because there's just a ton of work that goes into building out the recommendations. There's teams of people, hours of work, really people that are passionate about nutrition and passionate about health that come in every day and do this good work. Eric talked a lot about the scores. The scores are great because they provide targets for us that we can identify and then try to leverage nutrition and foods to help upregulate or downregulate the pathway activity that we're actually measuring. It might be pathway activity, that might be the relative abundance of certain bacteria that are in the oral microbiome or in the gut. But it's important that we identify those targets. And now our job as the clinical nutrition team to build out the recommendations is to say, hey, now how can we hit those targets with foods, with nutrients, with supplementation? That's really important because when we start to look at foods themselves, we don't just look at an apple as an apple. We look at it as kind of the sum of its parts or the individual constituents that make up that apple. So the vitamins, the minerals, the fibers, the amino acids, the polyphenols, that's information. And those substrates are what work on those pathways and on those microbes to get the benefits that we want. So we go through, we build out our food ontology, we break down the foods to their individual parts. We have measurements and we quantify those constituents. And then we go through, we do hours of literature curation, really just scouring the published research to say, hey, what evidence is there for, constituent A for hitting target B? Every recommendation we go through, we evaluate, we tier it. We have a tiering system based off the quality of the information we're able to find. A tier 1 level might be for, that placebo-controlled double-blinded trial in humans. We also evaluate, hey, what is the quality of that trial? We also incorporate other information from animal studies and bench studies. That's not going to have as high a tier, but it's still good, solid information, especially as we're talking about the individual activity of microbes and what's happening with the microbiome. So we document all that. We look at supplements and dosing. What are the most effective doses out there based off the literature, the quality of ingredients, what standardizations and extracts are we looking? Maybe we don't want a whole food powder. Maybe we want to emphasize a particular constituent of, I guess turmeric and curcumin might be a good example. But we take all that into consideration and we curate this information, put it into our knowledge base, and then our artificial intelligence machine uses that to determine which foods or supplements might be the best match for you and your biology. So there is a method to the madness. We strive to give the highest quality evidence-based recommendations we can, and then provide them in a way that's tangible and actionable, right? To get you started on building good health right out the door. I'm going to transition here into oral health. There's no denying you got to brush your teeth, you got to floss, right? Ooh. Regular dental cleanings, all the things. I think most people recognize that as important, but they don't really realize how important nutrition is as a part of establishing oral health, right? Diet and nutrition has a tremendous impact on your oral microbiome and your oral health, and it's often overlooked, which is unfortunate. I think we all understand we should avoid sugar to prevent cavities, but beyond that, the diet actually plays a leading role in influencing the composition and the activity of your oral microbiome. And this activity, it's very important for our health. So we're happy to highlight the key role of nutrition in establishing oral health and give some insights into the types of recommendations you might see based off your scores. I also want to note with your recommendations, we give general tips and recommendations for oral hygiene. There's a ton of useful information here, things on like what products to look for, what ingredients to avoid in your toothpaste, tips on tongue scraping, teeth whitening, and so much more. So those are there, but then we give you those personalized recommendations that are based off your scores and the activity happening in your biology. And the strategy is simple. Increase your superfoods, bring a couple of servings of them into your daily diet, pull out those avoid foods, maybe have a serving or two of your minimized foods a week, if any at all, but we lay it all out for you in the mobile app so you can have those recommendations ready to go at the grocery store, the restaurant, on vacation, wherever you may be, to really make it as simple as possible. So let's get into the dental health scores. Dental health. So Eric mentioned this score. It's really the focus of cavity promoting activities and bacterial taxa, and we can influence this through nutrition. And dental health, it's all about the integrity of the tooth enamel that's protecting the teeth, and we're constantly making deposits and withdrawals from this enamel. And so ideally, we're supporting an oral environment that's protective and anti-cavity, and we're making more deposits into that enamel than we are withdrawals in protecting our teeth. One strategy that's particularly effective is influencing the local pH of the oral cavity and preventing an overly acidic environment. That acid, it damages our teeth. It promotes the growth of the pro-cavity bacteria like Streptococcus mutans we mentioned. So bringing in foods like beets or greens that are high in nitrates or peanuts that are high in free arginine. Free amino acids, it turns out, are very important for the oral cavity. Protein digestion, it doesn't start until the food hits our stomach. So we need those amino acids to be readily available in the oral cavity. Peanuts and arginine are a great example of this. But they're particularly important because they're providing that nitrogen that's used to increase the pH in the oral cavity and make it less acidic. Another strategy here is to use herbs, sage, rosemary, thyme. They contain constituents, terpenes, that positively influence the oral microbiome, discourage that pro-cavity bacteria growth, support the commensal bacteria that are protective. Black pepper, also interesting enough, it has selective antimicrobial activity. Again, that helps eliminate the growth of those pro-cavity bacteria. And then we can bring other foods rich in polyphenols, support the growth of those protective commensals. Green tea, cinnamon, they're both great examples for this. And then coconut oil also being very beneficial and having an influence. And, you know, incorporating these foods into your regular diet, it's easy to do. We're not talking about earth-shattering changes here, but finding simple ways to incorporate more herbs and spices into the meals you're already preparing, help rebalance that oral environment and tip things in our favor. So, you know, swap out the iceberg lettuce with some beet greens, add some sage and thyme to, you know, that roasted chicken that we're cooking, swap out the coffee maybe for some green tea, or if you're going to have the coffee, you know, add some cinnamon. All easy fixes to just help improve your dental health score and get those benefits. So let's talk about our breath health score. Everyone wants good breath, right? We should probably rename this the KISS score, but it's not just a vanity score, bad breath. It's actually an indicator of underlying pathology, health conditions, microbiome dysbiosis. Like Eric mentioned, the bacteria in our mouth can metabolize the foods we eat and create these volatile organic compounds that are dispersed in the air and create bad breath. So we can influence this pathway activity in the production of these compounds with targeted nutrition. Again, bringing in those supers and avoiding those avoids. You know, I think most of us are familiar with mouthwashes. I just want to say a quick bit. You know, we don't have to bring in harsh antimicrobial mouthwashes. You know, there's a time and place for these, but we need to be strategic, and we need to really think about these the same way we think about antibiotics for the gut, right? So we wouldn't take a round of antibiotics because we have foul smelling gas, right? No, we'd follow our Viome recommendations. We'd adjust our diet, influence the microbiome by eating the rainbow of colors and fruits and vegetables, bring in digestive enzymes maybe. So we can do similar things with the oral microbiome without dropping an antimicrobial bomb right away. So pH is one of the strategies. Well, you'll hear pH a lot, so it plays a role here. So you might see recommendations again to avoid acidic foods. Eric mentioned citrus. It's both acidic and astringent. But there's other strategies too. We want to bring in prebiotic fibers found in fruits, things like watermelon and nectarines. They're particularly beneficial in producing, in minimizing the production of these volatile sulfur compounds, which are a major contributor to breath. The fibers, the fructooligosaccharides, they divert the bacterial metabolism away from the amino acids and towards carbohydrate metabolism. So we're essentially providing an alternate fuel source for the bugs. It's simple, but it's effective, and this is good because we can also provide these fructooligosaccharides through supplementation. You know, we've got them in our stick packs, but we try to enforce them through the nutrition in the diet. We can also decrease the production. We can decrease the production, but also break down those products that have already been produced, right? So foods like mint and spearmint, you might recognize, they do this work, but other foods like green tea, spinach, parsley, apple, I mentioned, are just as effective. And you might see these as superfood recommendations depending on your needs. Another source of bad breath, Eric mentioned, are those polyamines. They're very foul smelling compounds. Again, and we can decrease the production of these. Foods that are high in anthocyanins are particularly effective. So you might see recommendations for currants or blackberries or blueberries here. We've also found herbs like turmeric, clove, and cardamom are really effective at improving the score. Again, not because they mask the smell of the bad breath, right? You know, they inhibit the bacteria in the oral cavity for producing the compounds that cause the bad breath. So it's not just a cover-up job. We don't cover up the odor. We're positively influencing the composition of the microbiome and its activity. And there's lots we can do besides just avoiding onions and garlic and eating Tic Tacs, right? So really bringing in this nutrition not only improves the breath, but also the oral health environment, which is very important. All right. So finally, we have the gum health score, excuse me. Possibly the most important to emphasize because of the role the gums play in maintaining oral health and really whole body health. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but the nutritional strategy here to support healthy gums, it involves maintaining the protective barrier they create, as well as addressing any inflammatory activity that's destructive to the gums. Excuse me. Yeah, a little. We got to remember that gum tissue does not grow back. It's very important. Once it's gone, it's gone. And that really exposes us to a whole host of issues. So incorporating foods and supplements that protect the gums, it's critical, especially if you have a not optimal gum health score, right? So promoting foods high in antioxidants, things like lycopene is a part of the strategy. You might see recommendations for foods like tomato or guava that are excellent sources. Lycopene, it protects the gums from the destructive free radicals. They're produced by our own cells, but it's in response to certain bacteria. And those free radicals can perpetuate the damage that's occurring. And there's evidence that antioxidants like lycopene, they can help reverse that damage and even reverse gingivitis, which intuitively it might not make sense, right? But it's the exact same strategy we use in the gut to restore the gut lining. Somehow that idea gets lost when we think about the oral cavity, but it still holds true. And bringing in this simple nutrition to influence those bacteria, it's key. So the gums, just like the gut lining, they're covered with a protective mucous membrane that serves as a kind of initial barrier to the outside world. When the barrier is intact, it's very difficult for the microbes to come through. But once they can punch a hole in that, then that's where we see that inflammation and that destruction. And it turns out that the microbes, they actually can feed on these mucins that form the mucous membrane. They're almost like a lattice, but microbes begin to feed on that and create holes. When they break through, that's when we see the acceleration of damage to the gums. So if there's high mucin degradation, which we can measure, we can discourage this activity by providing the microbes with substrates that replace the mucin that's being used as an energy source. So you might see foods like celery, mushrooms, seaweed being recommended that provide these substrates. You might also see recommendations to provide nutrients that restore that mucin layer and support cross-linking of the mucins. Again, kind of forming that lattice that strengthen that barrier. And then again, if your inflammatory is high, that activity, you'll see some anti-inflammatory recommendations, things like turmeric, EG, CG from green tea, omega-3 fatty acids and fatty fish like salmon and mackerel, so important. So again, we have these simple nutritional strategies that have profound benefits for balancing the oral microbiome and establishing oral health. And I've talked a lot about foods and fibers, but I really haven't talked about the benefit of introducing oral probiotics, which play a tremendous role in influencing the activity and the composition of the microbiome. We're actively developing recommendations for oral probiotics and personalized lozenges that address the activity measured in your mouth. We're really excited about that. We're building those out and more to come. So stay tuned when we can really enhance the recommendations, the nutritional recommendations, what we're able to provide. So the importance of oral health. It's not just about fresh breath and preventing cavities. It's not just about having a good smile. Those things are nice. It's important, but our oral health and the oral microbiome, they have a measurable impact on our whole health. Guru touched on this at the beginning. Our body, it's a system of systems, and they communicate and influence each other. And just like the gut is an external environment within our bodies, our body's defenses are important in keeping that environment contained. The same thing holds true in the oral cavity. If we're unsuccessful at maintaining oral health and maintaining that protective barrier and holding that environment, we start to see the effect on other body systems, cardiovascular health, neurological health, respiratory, digestive, even a huge role the oral microbiome has on the gut microbiome. How does it do this? How does the oral health affect other systems? It's through epigenetics. It's the turning on and off of genes that control key functions. There's the triggering of inflammatory cascades and immune activity. Microbes from the oral cavity can cross those damaged gums, enter circulation, and contribute to chronic low-grade inflammation. It's really this catalyst for chronic disease, things like heart disease, diabetes, obesity. So there's multiple mechanisms that are well documented in this area, but the key thing to remember that it's simple strategies, nutrition, hygiene that can have huge benefits, and really our focus is to recognize dysfunction, correct it, and really be preventative in our approach to chronic disease and maintaining good health and wellness.
Thank you, Grant. That gives us a really good sense of the kinds of lifestyle changes we can make to make a real big difference to our oral health and therefore to the rest of our general wellness. Right. Let me ask a couple of questions of our speakers. So let me start with Eric. So Eric, you talked about all of those scores we can see in the app for understanding oral health. Of course, from before, we also had a lot of scores related to gut health, right? So my question to you is there a connection between the oral health and the gut health? And can we see the connection with the oral health scores and the gut health scores and the way they measure the different, biological activities?
Sure. So I'm going to respond by talking about one aspect of your oral environment, which is similar to your lower gastrointestinal tract, and that's just through the production of mucin proteins. So mucins are critical to your health, and their diverse protective roles are underappreciated. There are over 20 different types of mucins that our bodies produce. Some are physically attached to membranes, others contribute to different types of fluids like tears, saliva, mucus, and phlegm. And the nature of each of these fluids is very different. Mucins produced in the mouth have several protective functions. They keep your mouth hydrated, they physically separate your body from microbes and molecules, and they form a physically complex network which can slow down the activities of harmful microbes. One obvious difference between your mouth and your intestines are your teeth. Your intestines have no teeth, so the roles of mucins in your mouth may be evolutionarily tailored to protect against carcinogenic microbes. While in your intestines, there's relatively little oxygen, so perhaps the role of mucins in your intestines may be more tailored to keeping oxygen and other molecules from easily passing between your body and your gut microbiome. However, in either location, the thickness of mucin layers will impact the environment. One example is when mucus thickens by only a small fraction of a millimeter, the diffusion of oxygen across the layer can be slowed by over 100 to 1,000 times. Therefore, despite subtle differences between the mucins in your mouth and in your intestine, when there's too little mucin or microbes degrade too much mucin, we expect similar detrimental effects in both locations. So in this way, we're able to use mucin-related scores to measure and assess similar microbial activities as they occur in either your mouth or your gut.
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you. That's great. So, Grant, let me ask you another question about some of those lifestyle changes that you're talking about, right? I think
Absolutely.
that everybody considers oral hygiene to be a part of their daily lives, right? But I think you're taking it sort of one level higher to oral health. So how do we make oral health as important in our lives as oral hygiene, and why should we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We do focus on that hygiene part, and it's important, right? We are our habits, and that those habits really influence on a day-to-day basis the activity that's occurring, especially with our microbiome. I think what we need is more education and more awareness, and I think that's where Viome comes in to underscore the importance of both the microbes and the oral health in establishing not just oral health, but the whole body health. It's really a key component, and if I can do my job, it's to have folks begin to shift their thinking and think of nutrition and diet as a key part of that hygiene, right? So just like exercise is hygiene, for your muscles, in the same way that nutrition's a hygiene for our gut. Hygiene is just a practice we use to really create and foster health. And nutrition is just as important a part of that hygiene for our oral cavity than it is anywhere else. And at the end of the day, that's what I really want folks to realize. And again, this isn't throw everything out of the kitchen type recommendations. These are simple strategies, herbs, spices, fruits, vegetables, just simple switches, and bring in those superfoods and follow those recommendations we're able to provide in the app that can really move the needle.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, creating those habits and thinking about the holistic, view of all wellness throughout the body is super important. So that's why we created this full body intelligence system, right? So as I said before, when we talk about wellness, you may see a partial picture of your wellness when you just look at your gut health. You can see another picture, maybe a part of that picture, just by looking at your blood and your circulatory system. And you may see a third part by just looking at your oral microbiome. But when you connect all of those things together, and when you make it the full body intelligence, right, that's when you get the full holistic picture. And we think that this is going to be the revolution in our general wellness, right? So that's why we think full body intelligence is really not just, a small increment, but it's a big step function of why, everyone can get a much better understanding of their own biology, of their own health, and take the actions necessary on their own to make it better, right? So that's kind of the vision for full body intelligence. But at the same time, I want to talk a little bit about what is coming in the future for Viome. If you go to the next slide, in the near future, we will be thinking about how to make the ingredients, supplements, and all of these habits easier for people to follow. And one of the things that Grant and his team is working along with Eric's team is how we can incorporate new modalities for these ingredients, like oral lozenges, for example, right? Could make it super simple. It makes it a lot more direct because it stays in the mouth for a lot longer. And I think it can help people consume their superfoods that are important to the oral health. And that way, you can influence your overall health in a much more holistic, direct fashion. And this is a project that we are working on R&D. I'm just kind of giving you a sense here of what's coming next. Another big thing about oral health is how do we detect as early as possible some of the most debilitating diseases of the mouth, such as oral and throat cancer, for example, right? So we have a lot of insight into what is going on in your mouth when you send us a saliva sample. So we have created a new kind of test called the Cancer Detect test for oral and throat cancer. And this is going to be coming out in the not too distant future, very, very shortly. And with that, you can pretty much go to our website, you can order one of these tests, and it's going to be supported by licensed healthcare providers through telemedicine to authorize and to communicate and to support anyone who takes this kind of test. And of course, this is based on some really good science, right? We did a clinical study, we got the right data, we got the validation. We even applied for a FDA breakthrough designation, which was granted to us last year for getting a product that goes well beyond the standard of care and makes it easy for everybody to take this kind of a test at home and have peace of mind that there's nothing major problematic. If you just feel something in your mouth, like, a small lesion, a small inflammation or something like that, and you're worried about it, you can use this test to, lay that worry to rest, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing. And this is just going to be one of and first of many such things we're going to do for diagnostic purposes, not only your mouth, but the rest of the body as well. And the rest, we started the GI tract, we do other things in other systems as well. And please keep an eye on our website or on the news feed to see all of these things. And let me end with the overall mission of Viome, right? So we want to address the full range of chronic diseases, right? Including cancer, like I just said. by getting to the bottom of what is going on in the biological processes and helping people make the lifestyle changes that can keep them in the sort of the wellness circle, right? We don't want you to get into the, the healthcare, sick care system, right? We want to stay in the wellness circle as long as possible. But if for some reason you feel something is getting acute, there should be a way for you to detect those issues as early as possible so you can address them and then you get back into the wellness circle, right? That's where we want to go. So, you are all critical for helping us discover all of this biology and all of this medicine and science that can help all of humanity. So thank you all for joining us on this mission. You are also citizen scientists, so to speak, and you're contributing to the understanding of the root cause of chronic diseases and helping humanity in the process. And for joining this particular webinar, we want to thank you with a small gift here, which is a special offer for all the attendees here to use the code webinar, all capital, at checkout to receive $30 off any Viome test. Again, if you use the code webinar, all caps, at checkout, you will receive $30 off any Viome test. With that, we're going to end this webinar. And I want to say that at the next webinar, we will talk about our latest, greatest diagnostic test that I just mentioned. That's Cancer Detect for oral and throat. And until that webinar, thank you very much. Everybody take care.